All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Better Together, Rhode Island's Collaborative Approach to Statewide Imagery. My name is Emily. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at the National States Geographic Information Council. And if you are unfamiliar with our organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. And if you'd like more information on how to get involved with NISTRIC, please visit our website, www.nsgic.org. Just a couple housekeeping reminders. Everyone's been muted upon entrance, and there will be time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box. And if there's time at the end, we will also utilize raise hand function to ask some live questions as well. As you are hopefully aware, this webinar is being recorded and that will be made available afterwards. So please keep an eye out for an email with the recording. It will also be posted in the NISJIC knowledge base. So with all of that, I will turn it over to the presenters. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining today. My name is Brianna Zumhoff. I'm Partner Strategy Manager here for Government at Eagleview. Today's session is one we're really excited about. We're going to hear directly from a state-level customer that's found success building a statewide imagery program through a collaborative approach using Eagleview imagery. Before we dive in, we just wanted to make sure that you knew that it was going to be shared out, as Emily mentioned. We'll have about 45 minutes of content, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A. So throughout, if you do have a question come up, please drop your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can by the end. To introduce ourselves, my name is Brianna Zumhoff. I am Partner Strategy Manager here at Eagleview. I have a background in GIS. And Garth Hoxie Quinn is the Rhode Island Geographic Information Systems Coordinator, which is the equivalent to the state GIS coordinator. He works with various state agencies and local governments to help leverage geospatial data and technologies to their benefit. Here is our roadmap for the next 45 minutes. We will start with a brief introduction of who Eagleview is as a company and the details on the imagery program that we capture for Rhode Island. Then we'll hear from Garth about the statewide imagery program journey, what prompted the creation, what they built, and how they got there. Next, we'll highlight the value of that imagery in action with how the imagery is being utilized across a couple different agencies. And then we'll close out with some what's next, some key takeaways, and we'll jump into those questions. A lot of people tuning in are very likely familiar with Eagleview, but just to briefly go over our resume as an imagery provider, just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. Eagleview is a premier provider of aerial imagery, software, and analytics. Some of you may be familiar with our previous name, Pictometry. We are one and the same, having joined forces in 2013. We have over 25 years of experience, and we were founded in 1998 in Rochester, New York. And we have grown to be a company of over 1,000 plus employees globally. We participate in many national and regional professional organizations, including NSGIC. We are a bronze business partner with them. Eagleview has been and continues to be a leader of high-resolution aerial imagery and geospatial data. We have pioneered the capture of intelligent oblique aerial imagery. We also pride ourselves on the fact that a lot of what we do is built from the ground up and in-house, including all of our capture systems. We have a substantial IP portfolio of over 300 different patents for our cameras, sensors, and technology, and we are the only USGS certified oblique imagery capture system. In addition, we also, as a fun fact, have the largest civil fixed wing fleet in the US. And we also do all of our own imagery processing in-house. So we have extensive experience on our team, including certified photogrammetrists and former government employees that contribute to the accuracy of our high-resolution aerial imagery. In terms of coverage, we have extensive imagery coverage across the US and Canada and a huge portfolio dating back those 25 years. We have over 1,700 counties across the US, equating to about the coverage of 90% of the populated areas. of the US, and that's about 65% of the coverage of most of the populated Canadian provinces. Many areas we have extensive historic imagery that we capture annually, and we have over 10 billion unique image files in our database and counting. And this is continually growing every year, and even more so exponentially now that we have high resolution down to 1 inch. So before we jump in, we also want to go over different types of imagery we capture. We use a patented camera system that's mounted on a fixed-wing aircraft to capture both the orthogonal imagery, which is that top-down image that you see here at that 90-degree angle. And we also capture oblique imagery, which is captured at that 45 to 50-degree angle from all four cardinal directions, providing the user with the ability to rotate 360 degrees around a property or area. The example you're seeing here is from Evansville, Indiana, and this is a 1 inch image, which is the highest resolution aerial imagery on the market. This means that every pixel you're seeing represents 1 inch by 1 inch on the ground. All of this to say, as a vendor, we have the technical and operational capacity to provide state level imagery, but Rhode Island's success came from how they organized their program. So to get more specific, we'll go over what their imagery program currently encompasses. We capture the entire state of Rhode Island at 1,285 square miles. This capture is twice a year, once in the spring, that includes both orthomosaics and obliques at 3 inch GSD or ground sampling distance, and once in the fall, that is a 2 inch ortho only capture. Currently, the imagery is distributed to all 48 different agencies across the state, including 39 municipalities in the state, 8 agencies at the state level, and 1 academic institution. The current program has been running since 2018, which means they have a robust 8-year portfolio of historic imagery to utilize. And as it stands today, they have 215 active users on our cloud-based Connect Explorer platform, and that usage is growing. As a part of their imagery program, there are many ways to access imagery. For any government entity in Rhode Island, they have access through the cloud-based viewer, Connect Explorer, for both those orthos and obliques. But they also have imagery that is compatible with many common platforms, such as Esri software and third-party applications that can be embedded integrations into other softwares that they use day to day via API. And this is tapping into our vast partner network that we work with. Rhode Island has multiple imagery integrations set up across E911, CAD and RMS, GIS, and Public Works. And they also have their own geospatial data hub online where people can download tiles of this imagery. The imagery program was spearheaded and funded through a joint partnership between RIDOT and E911, using a combination of state and federal funding. A key part of this approach was creating a common operating picture across the state where agencies and municipalities could rely on the same spatial data as a single source of truth. Because a consistent statewide program requires multi-year contracts and funding commitments, working at that state level helped overcome budget, resource, and time constraints that oftentimes municipalities face while delivering a solution that benefited the state as a whole. So with that in mind, I will pass it over to Garth, and he will walk us through how their statewide program became what it is today.
Thank you, Brianna. My name is Garth Hoxie Quinn. Just in case anyone didn't catch that in the beginning, I am the state's essentially our GIS coordinator through the Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning, and I work closely with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation to enable some things. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the story of our success. So yeah, sorry. So before 2018, we had multiple imagery contracts across the state. And in 2018, the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, otherwise known as RIDOT, and Rhode Island E911, and occasionally DEM would come together to get imagery done. In 2018, that started to shift as Brianna had mentioned, we realized that there was a need to reduce duplicated efforts, really get rid of inconsistent data sets, and help the municipalities get better imagery and also break down siloed databases. If you want to advance, please. So in 2018, RIDOT started the conversation of comparing the separate efforts and saw geographic, contextual, and operational overlaps. They worked directly with E911, which is one of the other major contractors for imagery, to establish a joint funding agreement, consolidate imagery into one contract that could serve everybody's needs. This created the common database and accessible foundation of serving imagery across the state effective and efficiently. And now this brings us to today. So as Brianna had mentioned, we are 8 years into this venture. The state level imagery program has been successfully operating, and throughout that time, it has been a dynamic process adjusting and changing to needs. We've reduced our flights from 3 flights a year down to just 2 flights a year, which are, as mentioned, are done in spring and fall, recognizing that it wasn't necessary for us to do all 3 of them. Now that the program has proven successful and is established, the next goal is to continue the investment by increasing usage across the various state agencies, making this authoritative data set for the entire state, while also being sure to continue to adjust on the needs of state agencies and our local governments. And yeah, thank you. But as many of you know, creating a state level imagery program is often easier said than done. For Rhode Island, the key to success was coordination, communication, and clearly defining the capture requirements. When the state began comparing agency funding cycles and procurement timelines to identify opportunities for alignment, just as important, participating agencies aligned on the requirements that mattered most, including imagery accuracy, resolution, and recency. RIDOT served as the central point of contact, and they still do, in creating a forum where agencies could share their needs, priorities, and input. Once those needs were aligned, the next step was ensuring that everyone had access to the imagery, the tools, and the resources needed to be successful. That's not to say that our model is a one-size-fits-all approach. Every state and organization have different needs, processes, and constraints, but in many cases, the first and most important step is to simply start by having a conversation. If you want to move on to the next one. So really now we're in the process where we're driving the adoption across the state. So RIDOT has significantly expanded their outreach this year, engaging multiple state agencies and municipalities to provide access, training, support for the integrated statewide imagery into their existing workflows. The broader goal was to increase adoption and show the value of a unified common operating picture for cross-agency collaboration. Outreach accelerated in the spring once RIDOT had the bandwidth to focus on the effort, and the program has already seen a strong early engagement. And with that, you can see the numbers on the slide. And we have the proof is in the numbers. So since April of this year, usage across logins, searches, and transactions, which are the individual image views, have increased significantly. And with the additional help from Eagleview providing resources, planning user meetings, and virtual trainings, it continues to grow. As of August 13th, the usage is on track to be consistent with the previous month's metrics. And then the impact usage trends year to date since launching targeted outreach to engage sub-organizations this past spring. Transactions, logins, and searches to the Connect Explore platform have drastically increased. Rhode Island promoted their imagery through trainings, lunch and learns, and resource dispersals, which included engaging with their Eagleview regional representatives to additionally champion the program. On its face, these are simple approaches, but the results prove that repeated engagement activities pays off to raise awareness and increase imagery across the state. So every statewide program faces different barriers, whether those are funding, procurement, competing priorities, or varying technical needs. For us in Rhode Island, the decisive advantage was coordination. Initially, the program had champions. So Steve Cupp from the Rhode Island Department of Transportation and Director Martins from E911 recognized the value of working together and kept the effort moving forward. They helped connect the right stakeholders, communicate the broader value of the program, and turn the concept into something agencies would get behind and support, which we all know can be tricky. Second, the stakeholders had a consistent forum where they would compare their requirements, funding cycles, procurement timelines, and operational constraints. Those conversations helped transform separate agency interests into a shared plan that could serve both RIDOT, E911, our 39 municipalities, and other state agencies. And then finally, Rhode Island understood that establishing the program was only the beginning. Imagery creates the most value when people know it's available, understand how to access it, and can apply it within their everyday workflows. Training, demonstrations, outreach, and practical use cases helped build agency support and expand the adoption. The takeaway is that Rhode Island's success was not based on one agency acting alone. It came from strong advocates, sustained communication, and a deliberate effort to turn access into meaningful use. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some access and adoption. So we're going to move from building the program to actually putting the imagery to use. A successful imagery program depends on more than simply acquiring the data. Without access and adoption across participating agencies and municipalities, even the best coordinated program can fall short. The goal is to make sure the right people can easily access the imagery, understand how it supports their work, and have the tools and resources needed to incorporate it in their day-to-day workflows. So here we have, we see consistent statewide data source, going into web tools, integration, and base maps. So the real value of the imagery comes from making it part of the tools people already use every day. When imagery is built into existing applications and workflows, people are much more likely to use it consistently and see the value. Access also needs to reflect how different users actually work. Not everyone needs the same application or the same level of functionality. The goal is to meet the people where they are rather than forcing everyone into a single program or platform. In Rhode Island, the same imagery source supports a wide range of uses, from RIDOT's maintenance management system and the ArcGIS Enterprise to CAD and RMS, E911 PSAPs, the municipal assessors, and other GIS applications. There's also a public distribution path through the Rhode Island Geographic Information System, which makes the imagery more broadly accessible to the general public. That shared source creates another important benefit: consistency. Instead of different teams working from different dates, products, or sources, everyone can reference the same statewide imagery. That makes the collaboration easier and reduces the need to reconcile the patchwork of data. Sorry, lost my place. And to take a point one step further, a contract and a login do not automatically translate into usage. Here in Rhode Island, Adoption really began to grow when people made a deliberate effort to promote the program and show others how the imagery could support their work. Both Steve Cutt, so Steve Cutt was one of our strong advocates of the program, and then Director Martins from E911, and then even myself, representing both statewide planning and RIGIS, have played roles as GIS champions, connecting use cases and adopt opportunities across organizations. RIDOT also took on a larger role in helping expand awareness and usage. Eagleview supported the effort through in-person user group demonstrations and 2 additional webinars in June of this year. About 30 to 40 people from different departments and municipalities also participated, helping broaden awareness of what was available and how it could be used. And as we just saw in the usage data a few slides earlier, we see a clear month-over-month increase in awareness and outreach as outreach has expanded. Importantly, the program is not truly complete once imagery is captured. In many ways, that's just the beginning. The real work comes next through sustained promotion, advocacy, and education that drive the adoption and ensure imagery is actively used across agencies. So what does the adoption look like in action? There are many ways imagery can be put to work across agencies, and that is where the value of the program really becomes tangible. Imagery empowers insight, helps teams make faster, more informed decisions, and improves the day-to-day work happening across organizations. One of the original operational drivers in Rhode Island was for project oversight, particularly for environmental and stormwater requirements. More frequent, up-to-date imagery made it possible to monitor activities and meet mandated requirements without requiring every observation to become a field visit. And this value extends well beyond project oversight. Current imagery helps project managers supports constituent services and internal coordination, and gives other sources of information for incident management. As you read through these examples, consider this question: how many decisions across your agencies are being made today using imagery that is outdated, inconsistent, or different from one jurisdiction to another? And I'm now going to pass it back over to Brianna.
All right, thanks, Garth. So next, we are going to jump into a few use cases in transportation and infrastructure management. So RIDOT uses imagery as the foundation for the statewide inventory of areas that it is responsible for in mowing along transportation corridors. This was actually a really unique use case that they told us about that we had never even heard of before. So this was something that they creatively came up with themselves. Staff can use this imagery to create precise polygons representing individual roadside areas, including medians, interchanges, ramps, and other maintained spaces. Each of these polygons becomes a manageable asset within RIDOT's maintenance database. The polygons are then assigned important attributes, including the number of acres, how frequently the area should be mowed, the type of equipment required, and its maintenance priority. As this example shows, the equipment required can vary significantly within one single interchange. One area may require a standard mower, while the other might need a boom axe or a weed whacker or a walk-behind mower. This imagery from Eagleview helps RIDOT document those differences consistently and build a more complete picture of its mowing responsibilities across the state. And then once they collected all that data, they put it into a database. The mowing polygons are then attributed and established. They bring that into this maintenance dashboard where staff can see the full scope of the program, including approximately 3,735 acres maintained across all of their transportation corridors. And this helps organize those acres by mowing cadence, distinguished areas that are not landscaped, areas that are mowed once, mowed 2 or 3 times, or even 4 or more times throughout a cycle. Each area can be mapped and connected to its acreage, the required equipment, the maintenance priority, and the related work orders that are needed. And this gives RIDOT a consistent way to plan and work and track to see what happens across different facilities and regions and correctly dispatching at the right time. Instead of managing mowing as a series of disconnected assignments, they can see this as a full program. Imagery provides the geographic foundation, while the database turns that information into organized and actionable maintenance records. This is a good example of imagery supporting more than just one visualization. It becomes an operational tool for understanding the scale of the work and assigning those appropriate resources, and then maintaining corridors in a regular schedule. One other good example that they have is road construction. That happens all the time, particularly in the summer, and that can change the physical alignment of roads, ramps, and intersections, which means that the corresponding project needs records to be changed and updated as well. So RIDOT uses the current imagery as a visual reference to compare its mapped roadway information with the current conditions on the ground. The staff can identify where road geometry shifted, where they need to verify a new alignment or update the mapped limits of work accordingly. In this example, the imagery provides a clear context around a complex interchange and allows staff to not only see the roadway itself, but how the ramps and connecting roads and shoulders and surrounding features relate to that project area. This helps them maintain those project records accurately and reflect the current transportation network and the actual geographic extent of the work as it progresses. This is the same approach that it's also used to track municipal road projects that are funded by the state through the Road Restore program. RIDOT can map the limits of the work for each participating project and create a consistent record exactly of what the road segments are included in that area. The imagery is especially valuable because it gives staff the recognizable view of the surrounding neighborhoods, and it helps them verify that project boundary and providing the correct roads. They also bring this into a common statewide view, as you can see on the right, and it makes it easier to understand where those investments are being made and distinguish one project area from another across municipalities. And this helps them track those projects using consistent information. Together, those two examples between mowing and the construction projects, it helps establish accurate roadway geometry, and this keeps it up to date and defines the limits of the work and provides that geographic context for monitoring those projects. Next, I will pass it over to Garth, and he is going to highlight some use cases in public safety.
Thank you. So yeah, in Rhode Island, our public safety, our E911 folks, they also use the imagery. So in this example that you see here, might be a little bit difficult, but there are two green dots kind of in the center of the image. So those green address points show how current imagery can help staff identify lots where new construction is underway or development is beginning to take shape. This helps connect the information that we may already have, whether it's a coordinate, an address record, or tabular data, to what's actually happening on the ground. This also gives staff an opportunity to validate and improve address and site data proactively before an emergency call depends on that information being used and accurate. And then our program, they also will use a combination of the ortho and oblique to better understand what's happening in a certain location. So in this image, the left image shows how imagery can help identify a new building that does not yet have an address point. By comparing the two views, the staff can confirm that something has changed and updated the location record accordingly. The oblique imagery adds another layer of context. So beyond identifying the building itself, staff can see details like the number of floors, exterior color, and other distinguishing characteristics that can help describe the structure for first responders. For emergency response, that additional context matters. A more complete and accurate location record gives call takers and responders clear information about where they're going and what they're looking for. The same imagery can also show what is no longer there when a building has been demolished. In this instance, the existing address point can be marked as an abandoned or retired while preserving the history of the site. So, and that's kind of seen on this next slide in the corner where that green circle is. So imagery, again, imagery can also help keep road and intersection data aligned with what is actually on the ground. By using visible pavement, driveways, and access patterns as a reference, teams can make more accurate edits when road geometry and intersections change. I will say our E911 folks and our DOT folks work very closely together on a lot of this. For E911, that accuracy has a direct impact on their operations. A change to a road, a driveway, or intersection can affect routing, dispatch context, and ultimately the information available to call takers when it's needed. And as I was mentioning about the buildings that were demoed, you can see the two locations marked with the X, which indicate buildings that have been demolished. Even when a structure is gone, retaining the address as abandoned or retired can be important, especially if the site may be rebuilt at some point in time. This just helps create a historical record and maintains continuity and accuracy in the address data. And then this final example that our E911 folks had provided us, coordinates can, get you into the general area of an asset, but the imagery can show you exactly where it is. For something like the camera, as seen in these two images above, the high resolution imagery makes it possible to identify the precise physical installment point. That precision also improves the underlying GIS data. Instead of a point that is simply nearby, teams can update the layer so that the map location accurately reflects where the asset exists on the ground. And then when agencies are working from the same shared imagery source, that benefit extends across organizational boundaries, whether it's DOT assets, E911 data maintenance, or public works infrastructures. Teams can use the imagery to maintain more accurate, consistent GIS layers. And then so we're going to take a few moments and look towards the future. So the next opportunity is for us is to keep building on what's already working while staying focused on the needs that drive the program. This means broadening our adoption across more state sub-departments, municipal workflows, and operational applications through the integration in education, while continuing to improve consistency and access to an authoritative imagery source. There may be opportunities to evaluate higher resolution or certified products where they provide meaningful value. And as new capabilities such as AI and derived data become available, the same principle will apply. Start with the operational question or workflow, then determine whether the technology is the right fit. These are directions to consider, not firm commitments. The goal is to keep the program flexible as agency priorities evolve, using the same discipline that helps build it in the first place. Start with the user need, choose the capability that best supports it, and set users up for success with training, tools, and resources. And I'll pass it back over to Brianna for the key takeaways.
All right, thanks, Garth. Before we move into the Q&A, I just do want to leave you with 4 takeaways from Rhode Island's experience. First, collaboration usually comes first. The program started by bringing those organizations together around shared needs and finding where that funding, procurement, and operational priorities could align. Second, access is only the beginning. Simply having imagery as of availability does not guarantee that people will actually use it. Rhode Island's experience shows that importance of champions, outreach, training, and continued communication are key to actually utilizing the shared source. Third, the value grows when the imagery becomes a shared source as one common operating picture across organizations. We've seen examples today from transportation, E911, and those workflows utilizing each other and drawing from that same foundation. And finally, the program does continue to evolve. Rhode Island has adjusted its approach over time, and the next phase is about broadening that adoption, improving quality, and deepening integrations into those everyday workflows. And then beyond that, evaluating those new capabilities based on real operational needs. So the biggest lesson may be this: you don't not necessarily have to build the perfect program on day one, but starting that conversation, aligning stakeholders, building around those needs, and making sure everyone keeps evolving together are the keys. And with that, we will take some questions. Thank you for your time, everyone. All right, so it looks like we have a few questions in the meeting chat here. Let's see. So we have Tanya, who participates in the joint funding agreement to fund the program. Are there other opportunities to access imagery by other levels of government or nonprofits or education sectors? Garth, would you be willing to comment on this from the funding aspect?
Yeah. So right now, Tanya, my understanding of this, and I would have to circle back with the folks at DOT because they're kind of the ones who spearhead this program. The joint funding agreement is between our Department of Transportation and our state's E911 program directly. Um, my understanding is occasionally if an agency like DEM was looking for something extra, they might come to the table and with some extra money for a potential like buy up of some sorts. But I would have to talk to them more directly to find out who all is actually at that conversation.
Okay, that's helpful. We're in the process of trying to figure out how to kind of um, implement a statewide imagery program within the state of Minnesota that's a little bit more consistent over over time.
Yeah, no, I will we'll take some of these questions and like I'll go back and I'll probably talk
Yeah.
with Steve Cutt and I was joking with him. I'm like, we might have to write a white paper on how you do all this. So
Yeah. No, there's some key takeaways that are very will be helpful in our process. Yeah, and the other question I had was just access to imagery. It looks like it's very focused on state agency access, along with just municipalities. And we have various levels of government, including several regional agencies, um, as well as nonprofits like our watershed districts and such that could benefit greatly from a statewide imagery program. And our education sector, our graduate students, our undergraduate students as well. So, is that in consideration for access at some point for those types of groups with your program?
yeah, yeah. So right now, the way it works is when DOT gets the imagery, that is then passed over to the University of Rhode Island's Environmental Data Center. They're the managers of the RIGIS hub and essentially their enterprise system there. And they'll also publish the imagery there, which allows anybody to have access to it. With regards to the Connect Explorer, I believe right now that is state agency and municipality, and maybe I think the University of Rhode Island has access. I'm not sure what the future plans are for growth there, but being able to potentially allow nonprofits and other education sectors have access to it is something to probably bring up with DOT.
Great. Yep.
Tanya, just to jump to
Hmm.
build off of that answer on the Eagleview side, our government contracts operate as an umbrella. So since this is at the state level, we allow anybody under that state umbrella to access. So, they it's kind of their prerogative of how they want to build out that consortium or that state program. Um,
Okay.
yeah, they can provide access to anybody and everybody or restricted to certain people, but we, from the Eagleview side, contracting wise, we see it as the state is the umbrella, anybody underneath that is allowed access.
Including nonprofits.
It would be if they are doing work on behalf of the government.
Okay. Yeah,
Correct.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yep. All
Yep.
right. Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. The next question we had was from Jennifer. Did Eagleview help bring the historical imagery for Rhode Island into the viewer? What was the biggest challenge in getting all of the older data integrated? Well, Jennifer, I can answer that question actually. So the historical imagery that we've captured all the way back to 2018 has always been Eagleview imagery. So we didn't really have any issues of integrating that into our platform because it's all been Eagleview imagery from the beginning. We don't necessarily integrate that into our platform if it's coming from a different capture provider. But as we mentioned, they also have public portals, the open data portal that Rhode Island maintains. They have some older imagery that even I believe dates back to like the 1950s. That is even prior to, this particular program that they started in 2018. So all of that older imagery that may be captured from non-Eagleview source is still accessible, but within the Connect Explorer platform that our cloud-based viewer, that would be all Eagleview imagery that you can access year over year in those consistent historic libraries.
And I'll just add, Jen, I can look into what went into getting all of our historic aerials into the RIGIS database. I'm sure it was a challenge. So, but I'll look into that and get that information to you all.
Thanks, Garth.
Yep.
All right. We have a next question from Mihai in California. The state DOT and other agencies are partial to the services provided by Hexagon. How do these products compare? So I guess I cannot particularly say. That would be probably something that we'd have to have a conversation, just because I'm not super familiar with what those services are that Hexagon provides. But if you have a follow-up, we can always talk to you further after the presentation wraps up here, but we can make a note of that. And then I think Jennifer, you asked the other questions here. Can you view your images in stereo and or produce surface models? So all of the pixels within our imagery, every X, Y, and Z uh, is baked into each pixel. So I guess I can't particularly say from a technical standpoint if you could produce a surface model or stereo. We would have to probably look into that and get back to you. But all of our imagery is intelligent, so you're able to measure both distance, height, and do a lot of analytics within the Connect Explorer platform using those oblique images because every single pixel has X, Y, and Z data that we use from an elevation model baked into those pixels. And then how do you maintain ground control? Do you have a network or do you deploy survey before each acquisition? So we do a little bit of both. If our particular project requires specific ground control, we will go out and add additional ground control points. Sometimes our government customer might already have ground control that they provide to us that they'd like us to use for their particular project. And then sometimes we use, publicly accessible ground control points depending on what the accuracy specs for that particular contract are. So it kind of varies between each acquisition. But we do have a full team of photogrammetrists and surveyors on staff that are certified, and they have all of those details, and we can always follow up with you further if you have any other questions, Jennifer. Anything to add there,
Thank
Garth?
you.
I don't have anything to add only because I'm not as involved, but we can always follow up with our DOT on that question as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I was kind of
All
curious
right.
on the positional accuracy that you're meeting with even, 3-inch and 6-inch or whatever's being delivered.
We have white papers on our accuracy specs, so we can always send those to you as well if you'd like to take a
Okay.
look. Yeah. Anyone else interested in getting any questions answered? Hearing none. All right. Well, thank you for your time, everyone. I hope this was informative. As Emily said, we will be sending out a recording and the slides once we wrap up, and we can always follow up with you. Our contacts, both myself and Garth, are on the screen here, so you're always welcome to email both of us if you have any additional questions come up. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Garth and
everyone.
Brianna.